Have you ever held a secret so dangerous that speaking it out loud could destroy a billion-dollar empire? But keeping it silent could ruin thousands of innocent lives. That's exactly where Jessie, a waitress barely making rent, found herself on a rainy Tuesday morning in Seattle. One spilled latte, one overheard phone call. And suddenly, she wasn't just serving coffee, she was holding the detonator to the biggest corporate scandal of the decade. They thought she was invisible. They were wrong. This is the story of how a waitress heard what she shouldn't have and played a game she wasn't supposed to win. And trust me, you won't believe who she had to take down. The rain in Seattle doesn't wash things clean. It just makes the grime slicker. That's how Jessie Jenkins felt every time she clocked in at the Obsidian, a sleek, overpriced bistro on 4th Avenue, sandwiched between the towering glass obelisks of Amazon and the sprawling headquarters of the city's financial giants. Jessie was 29, overqualified, and drowning in student debt from a law degree. She had to abandon 3 credits shy of graduation when her mother got sick. Now, instead of drafting torts, she was memorizing the difference between a single-origin Ethiopian pour-over and the house blend for tech bros who tipped like they were doing her a personal favor by rounding up to the nearest dollar. It was a Tuesday. The morning rush was a blur of steam wands and demanding voices. The air smelled of roasted beans and damp wool coats. Jessie tightened her apron strings, pushing a stray lock of chestnut hair behind her ear. Her feet already ached in her non-slip shoes. Table 4 needs a refill, and the guy at the corner booth is asking for sparkling water. No ice. Specifically, no ice. Her manager, Lucas, snapped as he breezed past, holding a tray of pastries. Lucas was a good guy, but the stress of managing the Obsidian was turning him grey at 30. On it, Jessie muttered. She grabbed the bottle of San Pellegrino and headed for the corner booth. That booth was the most coveted spot in the restaurant high-backed velvet seats, tucked away in an alcove that offered almost total privacy. It was where deals were made, mergers were whispered, and affairs were hidden. As she approached, she recognized the man immediately. It was hard not to. Preston Sterling's face had been on the cover of Forbes and Wired 3 times in the last year. He was the CEO of Ether Systems, the cloud computing giant that practically ran half the internet's infrastructure. Ether's stock was currently trading at an all-time high, and Sterling was the golden boy of the tech world visionary, charismatic, untouchable. But the man sitting in the booth didn't look like a visionary. He looked like a man watching his house burn down while trapped inside it. His tie was loosened, his expensive charcoal suit jacket thrown haphazardly over the seat. He was hunched over his phone, his knuckles white as he gripped the device. He wasn't eating. He was staring at the table surface as if it were an abyss. Jessie slowed her pace. Waitresses are trained to be invisible, to slide into the periphery of a customer's vision, drop off the goods, and vanish. It's a superpower if you know how to use it. She approached silently, the carpet swallowing the sound of her footsteps. That's when she heard his voice. It wasn't the smooth baritone from his TED Talks. It was a jagged, terrified whisper. "I don't care what the audit says. Verify the liquidity pools again," Sterling hissed into the phone. "No, listen to me. If the SEC finds out about the ghost accounts before we can offload the debt, we are done. Not just fined. Done. Prison time. Arthur. Decades." Jessie froze. She stood just behind the high partition of the booth, the bottle of water clutching cold against her palm. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Ghost accounts. SEC. Prison. Sterling paused, listening to the person on the other end. Jessie held her breath. I know it's illegal, Arthur. That's why we did it. Sterling's voice rose slightly, then dropped back to a conspiratorial hiss. Look, the algorithm goes live on Friday. Once Project Icarus executes, it'll wash the debt through the shell companies in Cyprus. But we have a leak. Someone knows about the shortfall. Jessie's blood ran cold. Project Icarus. She knew that name. Her younger brother, Mike, had just landed his dream job at Ether Systems 6 months ago. He was a junior analyst in their cybersecurity division. Just last week, over a cheap dinner of spaghetti and meatballs, Mike had mentioned how weird things were getting at work. They've got us working on this thing. Jessie. Project Icarus. Top secret. They locked down the whole 7th floor. It feels off. Jessie had brushed it off then. Now, hearing it from the CEO's mouth in the context of fraud and prison, the spaghetti felt like lead in her stomach. Find the leak, Sterling commanded, his voice turning icy. I don't care who it is. If it's an employee, fire them. If they have evidence, destroy it. And Arthur, if I go down, I'm taking the whole board with me. Initiate the purge protocols by midnight. Purge protocols. That sounded violent. Or at least, final. Jessie realized she had been standing there too long. If he saw her, if he realized she had been listening. Men like Preston Sterling didn't leave loose ends. She took a deep breath, pasted on her customer service smile, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes, and stepped around the partition. Sparkling water, sir. No ice, just as you asked. Sterling jumped, his phone clattering onto the table. He looked up at her, his eyes wild, pupils dilated. For a second, the mask slipped, and Jessie saw pure, unadulterated panic. Then, the CEO mask slammed back into place. Jesus, he exhaled, covering the phone's microphone with a large hand. Don't sneak up on people. Apologies, sir, Jessie said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. She poured the water with practiced precision, careful not to let the bottle shake. I didn't want to interrupt your call. Sterling stared at her. He was analyzing her, looking for a flicker of recognition, a sign that she had understood the words SEC or ghost accounts. Jessie kept her face blank, a slate of polite disinterest. She focused on the bubbles rising in the glass. How long were you standing there? Sterling asked, his voice low. Just arrived, sir. Jessie lied effortlessly. The bar was backing up. Sorry for the wait. Sterling held her gaze for 3 agonizing seconds. Then, he seemed to decide she was too insignificant to be a threat. He was a billionaire. She was a woman in an apron with a coffee stain on the hem. To him, she was furniture. Fine, he grunted, waving a hand dismissively. Leave the bottle. Of course. Jessie turned to leave, her legs feeling like jelly. She needed to get to the back, to the break room, to call Mike. She needed to warn him. If Project Icarus was a cover for fraud, and Mike was working on it, he could be scapegoated. Or worse, if he was the leak Sterling was worried about. As she walked away, she heard Sterling resume his call. Yeah, the waitress. No, nobody. Look, just send the courier to the safe house. I'm leaving the ledger there. It has everything the Cyprus accounts. The names, the bribe list. I can't keep it on me. Jessie stopped at the service station, gripping the granite counter. A ledger. Hard evidence. She glanced back at the booth. Sterling was gathering his things. He stood up, threw $100 bill on the table enough to cover the water 20 times over, and rushed toward the exit. Phone still pressed to his ear. But in his haste, he made a mistake. As he swept his coat off the bench, a small, black moleskin notebook slid out of the inside pocket. It landed silently on the velvet cushion of the booth, obscured by the shadows of the alcove. Sterling didn't notice. He pushed through the revolving doors and into the rainy Seattle afternoon. Jessie stared at the empty booth. The black notebook sat there, innocent-looking, terrifying. The ledger. The restaurant was loud, clinking silverware and chatter filling the air. No one else had seen it. Lucas was arguing with a supplier near the kitchen. The other servers were in the weeds. Jessie felt a pull, magnetic and dangerous. That notebook was the answer. It was the gun and the shield. She walked back to the booth, her heart thumping so hard she thought it would bruise her chest. She picked up the $100 bill with her left hand and with her right. She swiped the notebook, slipping it into the deep front pocket of her apron in one fluid motion. She busied herself clearing the glass, wiping the table. Just a waitress doing her job. Once the table was clean, she retreated to the staff bathroom. She locked the door, leaning against the cold metal, and pulled out the notebook. It was heavy for its size. She opened it. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, account numbers, and diagrams. But it was the page marked with today's date that made her gasp. It was a list of names under the heading Liability Cleanup, Phase 1. The third name on the list was Michael Jenkins, her brother. Beside his name was a note in red ink. Access revoked, frame for data breach, authorized termination. Termination, Jessie whispered, the word tasting like ash. In the corporate world, that usually meant firing. But with the stakes this high, with purge protocols, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Mike. Mike, Jessie. Something is wrong. Security just escorted my boss out. They're locking down the building. I'm scared. Jessie stared at the text, then at the notebook. They weren't just going to fire him. They were going to pin the entire fraud on him. They were going to send her baby brother to prison for the crimes of a billionaire. Preston Sterling had made a mistake leaving this book, but Jessie knew that as soon as he realized it was gone, he would tear the city apart to find it. And he knew exactly where he had left it. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a target. Jessie shoved the notebook into her purse, hidden beneath her spare uniform. She texted Mike back, "Get out of the building, now. Don't talk to anyone. Meet me at the old library on 4th. Go." She unlocked the bathroom door and stepped out. Lucas was waiting for her, looking annoyed. "Jessie, Table 7 has been waiting 10 minutes for menus. What are you doing?" "I quit," Jessie said, untying her apron. Lucas's jaw dropped. "What, Jessie? You can't just... It's the lunch rush." "I'm sorry, Lucas. Keep the tips." She threw the apron on the counter and walked out the back door into the rain, the notebook burning a hole against her side. She had to save Mike, but first, she had to figure out how to use a billionaire's secrets against him without getting them both killed. The game was on. The Seattle rain was relentless, a cold sheet of grey that soaked through Jessie's thin cardigan in seconds. She didn't care. She kept her head down, weaving through the lunch hour crowd on 4th Avenue. Every siren made her flinch. Every black SUV that slowed down near the curb made her grip her bag tighter. She ducked into the Seattle Public Library, the futuristic glass structure rising like a geometric fortress. It was public, crowded, and had plenty of exits, The perfect place to disappear. She found a secluded corner on the spiral ramp of the book spiral, hidden behind a stack of biographies. She sat on the floor, ignoring the dirty looks from a nearby student, and pulled out her phone. Mike wasn't answering. "Pick up, you idiot," she muttered, her thumb hovering over the redial button. Finally, a text popped up. "Mike, I'm out. They confiscated my laptop. They have security at the exits checking bags." I slipped out through the loading dock, heading to you. Jessie let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She opened the black notebook again. She needed to understand what she was looking at. She wasn't a forensic accountant, but she had spent 2 years in law school reading discovery documents. She knew how to look for patterns. The notebook was a roadmap of corruption. There were dates going back 3 years. Project Icarus wasn't a new algorithm. It was a Ponzi scheme built on cloud storage credits. Ether Systems had been selling storage space they didn't have, booking the revenue, and then using new investor money to build the servers to fulfill the old orders. It worked as long as the company kept growing. But the growth had stalled 6 months ago. Now, the hole was $4 billion deep, and on page 42, she found the smoking gun, a handwritten entry by Sterling Transfer, complete to Cyprus Shell Entity Bluebird Holdings, $200 million personal contingency fund. If stock crashes, execute short positions via proxy. He wasn't just hiding the loss. He was betting against his own company. He was going to crash the stock on purpose, blame the rogue employees like Mike, and walk away with hundreds of millions from the short sale while the company burned. "Jessie." She jumped, shoving the notebook under her leg. Mike stood at the end of the aisle. He looked terrible. His face was pale, his glasses fogged up, and he was clutching his backpack like it was a life preserver. He was 25, but looked 18 in that moment. "Mike," she hissed, scrambling up and pulling him into a hug. "Are you okay? Did they follow you?" "I don't think so," Mike stammered. "Jessie, what is going on?" "Security came down. They said there was a Level 1 data containment breach. They took Jerry's badge. They took my badge." "Listen to me," Jessie said, grabbing his shoulders. "You are being framed. Sterling is cooking the books, and he's going to use your team as the scapegoats." Mike blinked, confused. "Sterling. The CEO, Jessie. That's insane. Ether is the most valuable company in the sector. We just hit a 52-week high. It's fake, Mike. It's all fake." She pulled the notebook out and flipped to the page with his name. "Look." Mike squinted at the handwriting. He read the note frame for data breach. His knees gave out. He slid down against the bookshelf, sitting heavily on the carpet. "Oh my God, I signed off on the server migration logs last week. They asked me to manually override the capacity flags. My manager said it was a glitch." "It wasn't a glitch," Jessie said grimly. "It was you leaving your fingerprints on the crime scene." "I'm going to jail," Mike whispered, tears welling up. "I'm going to federal prison." "No, you're not," Jessie said, her voice hardening. The fear was still there, churning in her gut, but a cold, sharp anger was rising to meet it. They had struggled their whole lives. Their dad left when they were kids. Their mum worked 3 jobs until she died. They had fought for everything they had. She wasn't going to let some billionaire in a custom suit ruin her brother's life to save his own skin. "We have this." She tapped the notebook. "This is leverage. It's a death sentence. Jessie," Mike hissed. "If he knows you have it, he doesn't know who I am. Yet." Jessie's mind was racing. "We need to get this to the authorities. The SEC, The FBI... We can't, Mike said, shaking his head frantically. You don't understand the reach Ether has. Our chief of security is ex-FBI. Our legal counsel used to work for the DOJ. If we walk into a police station, Sterling will know before we even finish filling out the report. The evidence will disappear, and we'll end up in a ditch. Jesse knew he was right. In a city run by tech giants, the lines between corporate security and public law enforcement were blurry at best. Okay, Jesse said. So we can't go to the cops. Not yet. We need insurance. We need to make sure that if anything happens to us, this information gets out. How? We leak it, Jesse said, but not all at once. We verify it. We need digital proof to back up the notebook. Can you get into the system remotely? Mike shook his head. They revoked my access. My token is dead. Jessie bit her lip. She looked down at the notebook again. There was a sticky note attached to the back cover. It had a string of random characters, G-7789-XL-key, and an address 1201 Western Avenue, Unit 4, B. What's this? She asked, showing Mike. Mike's eyes widened. That looks like a hardware encryption key. And that address? That's down by the waterfront. High-end condos. Sterling said something on the phone. Jessie recalled. Send the courier to the safe house. I'm leaving the ledger there. He must have been going to drop this off at that apartment. So that's his safe house, Mike said. And maybe where he keeps the backups, Jessie surmised. If we can get the digital files to match this notebook, we have a bulletproof case. The press won't be able to ignore it. Jessie, you are talking about breaking into a billionaire's safe house, Mike said, his voice rising an octave. We serve coffee and fix bugs. We aren't spies. We are today, Jessie said, because if we don't, you're going down for fraud. Do you want to spend 20 years in prison? Mike looked at his shoes. No. Then let's go. They left the library through the rear exit. The rain had turned into a storm. Jessie led Mike toward the waterfront, but she stopped at a CVS first. She bought a cheap burner phone, a baseball cap, and a bottle of black hair dye. Go into the bathroom and dye your hair, she told Mike. You have distinct blonde hair. If security cameras catch us, we need to look different. While Mike was in the bathroom, Jessie used the burner phone. She didn't call the police. She called the one person she knew who hated Preston Sterling more than anyone, Victoria Vance. Victoria was a ruthless investigative journalist for the Seattle Chronicle. She had written a scathing exposé on Ether 2 years ago, but had been sued into silence for libel because she couldn't produce the hard evidence. She had lost her reputation and was now writing for a second-tier blog, hungry for redemption. The phone rang twice. Vance speaking. I have the proof you were looking for 2 years ago, Jessie said, keeping her voice low. Project Icarus, the Cyprus accounts, everything. There was a silence on the line. Who is this? Someone who has Preston Sterling's personal ledger. I can give it to you. But I need your help. I'm listening, Victoria said, her tone instantly shifting from bored to predatory. I need you to be ready to publish tonight. But first, I need you to find out who owns the condo at 1201 Western Avenue, Unit 4B. I need to know the security layout. Honey, I'm a reporter, not a burglar, Victoria said. Do you want the story or not? This brings down Ether. It brings down Sterling. A pause. Give me 10 minutes. Call me back. Jessie hung up. She felt a strange surge of adrenaline. She was terrified. Yes. but she was also done being the invisible waitress. The doors to the CVS bathroom opened. Mike walked out. His hair was jet black, dripping wet. He looked tougher, or maybe just desperate. "Let's go," Jessie said. They walked out into the storm, heading toward the waterfront. They were walking into the lion's den. And they had no idea that Preston Sterling had already realized the notebook was missing. At that very moment, across town in the Ether penthouse office, Sterling was screaming at his head of security. "Find the girl," Sterling roared, throwing a crystal tumbler against the wall. "The waitress at the Obsidian. I want her found. I want that book back. And I want her silenced. Use the facial recognition network. Find her." Now, the hunt was on. The rain in Seattle had turned violent, lashing against the windows of the beat-up Honda Civic Victoria. Vance had arranged for them. It was a ghost car, registered to a shell company, untraceable, parked in a lot 3 blocks from the library. Jessie gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. Mike sat in the passenger seat, the black hair dye staining the collar of his shirt, tapping furiously on a laptop Victoria had dropped in the trunk. "We're 2 minutes out," Jessie said, her voice tight. "Are you sure this key works? According to the ledger, this is a master override for a Type 4 smart lock," Mike said, not looking up. "Ether manufactures these locks. If Sterling has a back door into the city's infrastructure, he definitely has one into his own safe house. The code in the book isn't just a password, it's a root access command." They turned onto Western Avenue. The condo building at 1201 was a monolith of steel and dark glass, rising out of the mist like a jagged tooth. It was the kind of place where people didn't have neighbors. They had non-disclosure agreements. "Park in the alley," Mike instructed. "The service entrance has a weaker signal encryption. I can loop the camera feed for maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Jessie parked the car behind a dumpster, killing the lights. "You said 10 before. I'm working with a burner laptop and a prayer. Jessie, 5 is generous." They stepped out into the deluge. Jessie pulled her hood up. She felt a strange dissociation, as if she were watching herself in a movie. Yesterday, her biggest worry was whether she'd make enough tips to cover the electric bill. Today, she was breaking into a billionaire's fortress. They reached the service door. Mike plugged a cable from the laptop into the electronic keypad. He typed a string of commands. The screen flashed green. Click. The heavy steel door groaned open. "We're in," Mike whispered. "Elevator to the 4th floor. Don't touch anything you don't have to." The hallway was sterile, smelling of ozone and expensive cleaning agents. They found Unit 4B at the end of the corridor. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a vault. Jessie pulled the notebook from her waistband. She read the code aloud. G-7789-XL-key. Mike punched it into the keypad. The lock engaged, disengaged, and then the door swung inward silently. The apartment was massive, spanning the entire width of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the stormy Puget Sound. It was sparsely furnished white leather couches, a glass table, and abstract art that looked like bruised metal. "Where is it?" Jessie scanned the room. He said he was leaving the ledger here, but the backups. "If he's moving money," Mike said, walking toward a sleek, black console table against the far wall. "He needs a secure terminal. He wouldn't do it over Wi-Fi." He pushed the table aside. Behind it, embedded in the wall, was a safe. But it wasn't a normal safe. It was a server rack shielded by reinforced glass. "Jackpot," Mike breathed. "This is a localized node. It's hardwired directly into Ether's mainframe, but bypassed through a private VPN. This is where he cooks the books. Mike pulled a specialized cable from his bag and connected the laptop to the port on the wall. Okay, I'm initiating the copy. We need to match the digital logs to the handwritten ledger. A progress bar appeared on the screen. 0%, 5%. It's going to take time, Mike said, sweat beading on his forehead. The files are encrypted. I have to decrypt them on the fly using the key from the book. Jessie paced the room, her eyes darting to the windows. The storm outside obscured the world, but she felt exposed. Suddenly, her burner phone buzzed. It was Victoria. "You have a problem." Victoria's voice was clipped. "I've been monitoring the police scanner and private security channels. A silent alarm was tripped at 12:01 Western." "We didn't trip anything," Jessie hissed. Mike looped the cameras. "Not the cameras. Amateur. The atmospheric sensors. You changed the humidity in the room when you opened the door. Sterling's security is paranoid level. There's a private response team 3 blocks away. They aren't cops, Jessie. They're consultants. Ex-mercs. You have 90 seconds before they breach the lobby." Jessie dropped the phone. "Mike, we have to go. Now, I'm at 78%, Mike yelled. "If I pull the plug now, the data corrupts. We get nothing." "They're coming." Jessie ran to the window and looked down. A black SUV screeched to a halt in front of the building. 4 men in tactical gear, no uniforms. Just black raincoats jumped out. They weren't moving like police officers. They were moving like hunters. 85%. Mike stared at the screen, his hands shaking. "Mike, leave it." "No," Mike shouted, his voice cracking. "This is my life. Jessie, if we don't get this, I go to jail. I'm not leaving without it." Jessie looked at the door, then at the window. There was no fire escape. They were trapped in a glass box. "Wait, the balcony." "Mike, finish it. I'm going to buy us time." Jessie ran to the kitchen. She grabbed a bottle of high-end olive oil and a lighter from the counter. She ran to the front door of the apartment and poured the oil across the hardwood floor of the entryway. 95%. The elevator dinged down the hall. Heavy boots thudded against the carpet. "Breach," a voice shouted from the hallway. "Done." Mike ripped the drive from the wall. "I got it." "Balcony go." Jessie screamed. As Mike sprinted for the sliding glass door, Jessie flicked the lighter and dropped it on the oil. A wall of flame whooshed up, separating the entryway from the living room. The front door kicked open. 2 men in gas masks burst in. They stopped, confronted by the sudden wall of fire. "Clear the hazard," one shouted. Jessie didn't wait. She bolted for the balcony. Mike was already over the railing, shimmying down a decorative trellis to the unit below, which was under construction. Jessie swung her legs over the wet railing. The wind howled, threatening to rip her off the side of the building. She looked down 4 stories of concrete. "Stop!" A voice roared from inside the apartment. A man stepped through the flames, his coat smoking. He raised a suppressed pistol. Jessie let go. She dropped 6 feet, landing hard on the concrete balcony of the floor below. Pain shot up her ankles, but she rolled, absorbing the impact. Mike grabbed her arm and hauled her up. "Inside move." They scrambled through the unfinished apartment, dodging stacks of drywall and buckets of paint. They could hear the men above them shouting into radios. "Stairwell!" Mike gasped. "The service stairs." They burst into the stairwell and ran down, skipping steps, their breath tearing at their lungs. They hit the ground floor and burst out into the alley just as the elevator doors in the lobby pinged open. They dove into the Honda Civic. Jessie jammed the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered, then roared to life as she peeled out of the alley. A bullet shattered the rear windshield, spraying glass over the back seat. Jessie screamed but kept her foot floored. She drifted onto Western Avenue, swerving into traffic, running a red light. "Did you get it?" she yelled, checking the rear-view mirror. The black SUV was already pulling out of the front entrance, lights flashing. Mike clutched the hard drive to his chest, his face pale as death. "I got it. I have the proof. Sterling has been laundering money for the cartels to cover the losses." Cartels. Jessie's blood ran cold. "It's worse than fraud. Jessie," Mike whispered. "He's washing blood money. That's why he has mercenaries. If they catch us, we don't go to jail. We go in the ground." Jessie looked at the rear-view mirror. The black SUV was gaining. "Hold on," she said, her voice dropping into a zone of cold focus she hadn't felt since she walked away from law school. "I'm going to drive." The chase wasn't like the movies. There was no music, only the roar of the engine and the terrifying thump-thump of the wipers fighting the rain. Jessie wove through the traffic on Alaskan Way, heading south toward the industrial district. She knew the roads. She had driven them for years, delivering catering orders. She knew where the potholes were, where the lanes narrowed, where the construction bottlenecks were. The SUV behind them was faster, heavier, and driven by a professional. Every time Jessie took a corner, the SUV was there, glued to her bumper. "He's trying to pit us," Mike yelled, looking back through the shattered window. "Call Victoria," Jessie shouted. "Tell her we have the drive. Ask her where to go." Mike fumbled with the burner phone. "Victoria, they're on us. We're heading south on 99. "Get off the highway," Victoria commanded. "They have access to the traffic cams. They're vectoring you. You need to go dark. Go to the Sodo district. There's a salvage yard on 4th and Lander. It's a dead zone for cameras." "Sodo, got it." Jessie yanked the wheel to the right, cutting across 3 lanes of traffic. Horns blared. She shot down an off-ramp, tires squealing on the wet asphalt. The SUV followed, scraping the guardrail sparks flying. They tore into the industrial district, a maze of warehouses, shipping containers, and dim streetlights. Jessie killed her headlights. "What are you doing?" Mike panicked. "Making us invisible." She navigated by the ambient orange glow of the street lamps. She took a sharp left into an alleyway between 2 massive brick factories, then a quick right into a chain-link fenced lot filled with rusted machinery. She slammed on the brakes behind a stack of crushed cars. The engine idled, a low hum in the silence. They waited. Seconds later, the black SUV roared past the alley entrance, its high beams cutting through the rain like searchlights. It didn't stop. It kept going, hunting for prey that had vanished. Jessie exhaled, her head resting against the steering wheel. "Okay, we lost them. For a minute." "We can't keep running," Mike said, his voice trembling. "They have resources we can't imagine. They'll find the car." "We ditch the car," Jessie said. "We move on foot to the rendezvous point." They grabbed the laptop, the drive, and the notebook. They abandoned the Honda in the salvage yard and climbed through a hole in the back fence. They were now in the labyrinth of the rail yards. The rain was freezing. Jessie's waitress uniform was soaked through, her shoes squelching in the mud. "We need to get this to Victoria," Jessie said. "She can publish it tonight. Once it's public, Sterling can't touch us. The eyes of the world will be on him." "Jessie." Mike stopped. He was looking at his phone. "My old access badge. I still have it in my wallet." "So it's deactivated?" "No," Mike said, his eyes widening. "It has an RFID chip, a passive tracker. All Ether employees have them for campus safety. Jessie froze. Throw it away. I can't just throw it. If they are tracking the signal, they'll see it stop moving. They'll know we're here. He looked at Jessie, a strange expression on his face, a mix of fear and resolve. Mike, what are you thinking? They want the leak, Mike said. They want the employee who stole the data. That's me. They don't know about you. Jessie. Not really. They saw a waitress, but they don't know your name. They don't have your face on file like they do mine. No. Jessie stepped back. Mike, no. If I split up, I can draw them away, Mike said, his voice gaining strength. I'll take the tracker and head toward the train tracks. I'll make sure they follow me. You take the drive and the ledger to Victoria. I am not leaving you. Jessie grabbed his arm. We stick together. If we stay together, they catch us both. Mike shouted over the wind. And if they catch us both, the evidence disappears. Sterling wins. He launders the money. He crashes the company. And thousands of people lose their jobs. I go to prison, and you disappear. He shoved the hard drive into her hands. You're the smart one, Jessie. You always were. You were supposed to be the lawyer. Finish the job. Before Jessie could stop him, Mike turned and sprinted toward the active train lines, waving his phone like a beacon. Mike! Jessie screamed, but he was gone, disappearing into the dark, wet maze of shipping containers. Moments later, Jessie heard tires screeching on the parallel road. The black SUV had doubled back. It was heading toward the tracks, toward Mike. Jessie stood alone in the shadow of a rusted crane. Tears mixed with the rain on her face. She wanted to run after him. She wanted to protect her little brother, but she looked at the hard drive in her hand. Finish the job. She turned and ran the opposite way, toward the city lights. She wasn't just a sister anymore. She was the executioner, and Preston Sterling was going to pay. Jessie sat in a 24-hour laundromat on First Avenue. It was 3 a.m. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A homeless man slept in the corner. She was wearing an oversized hoodie she had bought from a convenience store to cover her uniform. Her hair was matted, her eyes rimmed with red. She had the burner phone on the table. She had called Victoria. The journalist was waiting at a safe house in Capitol Hill. But Jessie hadn't gone there yet. She realized something during her walk through the rain. If she gave the info to Victoria now, the story would break in the morning. Sterling would be arrested eventually. But in the chaos, Mike would be lost. Sterling's men had him. If the story broke while Mike was in their custody, they would kill him to tie up the loose end. A dead scapegoat tells no tales. She couldn't just release the story. She needed to trade. She needed to walk into the fire one last time. Jessie opened the black notebook. She found the page with Sterling's personal contacts. There was a number listed as P.S. Direct. She picked up the burner phone. Her hand wasn't shaking anymore. She felt cold, solid, like the marble countertops she used to clean. She dialed the number. It rang once, twice. "Who is this?" Preston Sterling's voice answered. He sounded tired, but alert. "I have the book," Jessie said. Her voice was unrecognizable, low, raspy, dangerous. "And I have the hard drive from the safe house." There was a long silence on the line. "You're the waitress." "I'm the woman who owns you," Jessie corrected. "I know about Bluebird Holdings. I know about the cartel money. I know about the short sell." "Listen to me," Sterling said. his voice shifting to a smooth, negotiating tone. "You have no idea what you've walked into. You are out of your depth. Name your price. 5 million. 10, I can wire it to an offshore account in 10 minutes. You give me the book, you disappear, and you live like a queen." "I don't want your money," Jessie spat. "I want my brother." "Ah," the analyst. "Michael." Sterling let out a short, cruel laugh. "We have him. He's quite chatty. He told us you have the drive. He thinks he's protecting you." Jessie gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. "If you hurt him, I send everything to the SEC, the FBI, and the New York Times. I have it set on a dead man's switch. If I don't enter a code every hour, the email blasts go out automatically." It was a lie. She didn't know how to set up a dead man's switch, but Sterling didn't know that. "You're bluffing," Sterling said, but there was a crack of doubt in his voice. "Try me," Jessie said. "Do you want to go to prison for life, Preston, or do you want to make a deal? What do you want?" "I want Mike, alive and unharmed, and I want a confession." "A confession," Sterling scoffed. "You're insane. Not a written one? A trade? I give you the drive and the book. You give me Mike, face to face." "Fine," Sterling said quickly, too quickly. "Where?" Jessie's mind raced. Where could she meet him? Somewhere public, but somewhere she could control. Somewhere she knew better than he did. "The Obsidian," she said. "The restaurant. Meet me there in 1 hour. Alone. If I see one security guard, if I see one cop, the email goes out." "The restaurant is closed," Sterling said. "I have a key." Jessie lied again. 1 hour. Bring Mike." She hung up. She stared at the phone. She had just arranged a meeting with a man who killed people for money. She stood up. She needed to prepare. She wasn't going to the Obsidian to serve him water this time. She was going to serve him justice. She dialed Victoria Vance. "Victoria," Jessie said. "Change of plans. Don't publish yet." "What?" "Why?" Victoria demanded. "We have him." "He has my brother," Jessie said. "I'm going to get him back. I need you to do something for me. I need you to bring a camera crew to the Obsidian. But don't come inside until I give the signal. Jessie, don't do this. He'll kill you both." "He's going to try," Jessie said, pulling her hoodie tight. "But he's forgetting one thing." "What's that?" "He thinks he's meeting a waitress," Jessie said, her eyes flashing in the reflection of the washing machine door. "He doesn't know he's meeting a woman with nothing left to lose." She walked out of the laundromat and into the night. She had 45 minutes to turn the Obsidian into a trap, and she knew every inch of that restaurant, the knives in the kitchen, the exits in the back, the gas lines in the basement. Preston Sterling thought he was the shark. He was about to find out that even sharks can drown. The Obsidian was dark, save for the ambient city light filtering through the rain-streaked windows. It was 3:45 a.m. The restaurant, usually a hive of clinking glass and polished chatter, felt like a mausoleum. Jessie let herself in through the kitchen delivery door, using the spare key Lucas kept under a loose brick in the alley, a trick he showed her on her first week, in case she ever got locked out during a trash run. She moved through the kitchen by feel. Her hands brushed the stainless steel countertops she had wiped down 1,000 times. She knew where the knives were. She knew where the heavy cast-iron skillets hung. She knew the layout better than she knew her own apartment. Sterling thought this was a neutral ground. He was wrong. This was her turf. She didn't turn on the main lights. Instead, she flipped the switch for the mood lighting dim. Amber recessed bulbs that cast long shadows over the booths. She walked to the corner booth, the same one where this nightmare began. She placed the black notebook in the center of the table. Then, she took out her phone. She propped it up against the sugar dispenser, the camera lens facing the booth, obscured by a menu. She dialed Victoria Vance on a video call. "Are you ready?" Jessie whispered. "We're live." Victoria's voice came through the tiny speaker, tinny and distant. "I'm streaming this feed directly to a private server. The police commissioner is watching. The SEC chairman is watching. Do not let him see the phone. If this goes wrong, just get him to talk. Jessie, we need the intent. We need him to admit he ordered the hit on your brother." Jessie silenced the phone, leaving the video running. She took a deep breath. She wasn't trembling anymore. A strange calm had settled over her, the calm of someone who has already accepted the fall. At 4:00 a.m. exactly. The front door rattled. Jessie stood by the booth, her hands clasped in front of her, reverting to the posture of a server. Preston Sterling walked in. He wasn't alone. 2 men in dark raincoats flanked him, muscle, clearly, and between them, dragged like a sack of flour, was Mike. Mike. Jessie's composure cracked. Mike's face was swollen, one eye shut. His lip was split, but he was alive. He looked up, groggy. "Jessie, run!" "So," Sterling said, his voice echoing in the empty room. He looked impeccable. Even at this hour, his suit unwrinkled. "The waitress returns." He walked toward the booth, gesturing for his men to hold Mike back near the entrance. "I have the book," Jessie said, pointing to the table, "and the drive is in my pocket." "Give them to me," Sterling said, extending a hand. "Let him go first," Jessie demanded. "Walk him out the door. Once he's in the clear, I hand it over." Sterling chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You think you're in a position to negotiate. You're a girl who pours coffee. I run the digital infrastructure of the Western Hemisphere. I can make you disappear with a keystroke." "And yet," Jessie said, her voice steady, "here you are, in a dark restaurant, bargaining with me. You're scared." "Preston," Sterling's eyes narrowed. "I'm not scared, I'm annoyed. You're a loose end." "Why did you do it?" Jessie asked, her voice rising slightly to ensure the phone's microphone caught it. "Why destroy your own company? Ether Systems was a gold mine." "It was a sinking ship," Sterling snapped, his ego taking the bait. "The cloud architecture was flawed. We were bleeding cash for 3 years. I didn't destroy it. I tried to save my equity. I built the Cyprus accounts to hedge the collapse. I did what was necessary to survive, by framing my brother." "He's a pawn," Sterling shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "He's a junior analyst. Nobody cares about him. I needed a scapegoat for the data loss. It was clean, it was perfect, until you stole my ledger. And the cartels." Jessie pushed. "The blood money?" Sterling froze. He stepped closer, looming over her. "That's business, Sweetheart, money has no color. It just flows. And if I have to wash a few billion for some dangerous friends to keep Ether afloat, I do it." He pulled a gun from his coat pocket, a sleek, silenced pistol. He pointed it at her chest. "Enough talk. Give me the drive, or I kill you. I kill your brother, and I burn this place down to cover the evidence." Jessie looked at the gun. Then she looked at the phone hidden behind the menu. "You really shouldn't have said that," Jessie whispered. "Said what?" "All of it." Jessie kicked the table leg. The menu fell over. The phone screen lit up. Sterling looked down. He saw the video feed. He saw the live icon. "You bitch," he snarled, raising the gun. Jessie didn't wait. She grabbed the carafe of water from the table, heavy, thick glass, and smashed it into Sterling's face. He screamed, staggering back, the gun firing wildly into the ceiling. "Mike, run," Jessie yelled. The two guards at the door dropped Mike and drew their weapons, but they hesitated. From outside, the night exploded with light. Red and blue strobes flooded through the windows, blinding them. A bullhorn tore through the silence. "This is the Seattle Police Department. Drop your weapons. We have the building surrounded." Sterling wiped blood from his eyes, looking around frantically. "No. No. It's over. Preston." Jessie screamed, backing away toward the kitchen. But Sterling wasn't done. His face twisted into a mask of pure hate. He ignored the police. He ignored the sirens. He raised the gun at Jessie again. "If I go down," he roared, "you're coming with me." He pulled the trigger. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Jessie flinched, expecting the tear of metal through flesh. She squeezed her eyes shut. But the pain never came. She opened her eyes. Lucas, her manager, was standing in front of her. He had tackled Sterling from the side, emerging from the kitchen shadows like a linebacker. He must have been sleeping in the office again, something he did when payroll was due. The bullet had shattered the mirror behind the bar. Sterling and Lucas crashed into the table, glass flying everywhere. The gun skittered across the floor. "Get off me!" Sterling shrieked, thrashing. The front doors burst open. A SWAT team poured in, shields up, rifles trained. Down, everybody down. The two guards near the door surrendered immediately, raising their hands. Sterling tried to crawl toward the gun, but a heavy boot slammed onto his hand. He looked up. It was the lead officer. "Preston Sterling, you are under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder," the officer barked. Jessie slumped against the bar counter, her legs giving out. She watched as they handcuffed Sterling. He was bleeding, disheveled, shouting about his lawyers, about how he would buy the department. But for the first time, nobody was listening. Across the room, a paramedic was already kneeling beside Mike. Jessie scrambled over to him. "Mike! Mike!" Mike sat up, wincing as the medic dabbed at his cut lip. He looked at Jessie, his eyes filled with disbelief. "You—" Mike coughed. "You live-streamed it." "Victoria did," Jessie said, tears finally spilling over. She grabbed his face, checking him for serious injuries. "I just held the camera. Are you okay?" "I think my ribs are broken." Mike groaned, then managed a weak smile. "But I'm not going to prison." Jessie hugged him, burying her face in his shoulder. "No, you're not." 3 months later. The coffee shop on 4th Avenue was busy, but the air felt lighter. The rain had stopped for once, leaving Seattle crisp and bright. Jessie sat at a small table near the window, a cup of tea in her hands. She wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing a blazer. Across from her sat Victoria Vance. The journalist looked different, too, less hungry, more satisfied. Her exposé on ether systems had won a Pulitzer. It had dominated the news cycle for weeks. "The trial starts next month," Victoria said, tapping her tablet. "Sterling's lawyers are trying to plead insanity, claiming the stress of the market broke him. But with that video and the ledger, he's getting life." "Good," Jessie said simply. "And Mike, he's good." Jessie smiled. Google hired him. Apparently, hacking a billionaire's private server with a burner laptop is a good resume builder. He's working in their white hat security division, making more in a month than I used to make in a year." "And you?" Victoria asked, leaning forward. "You turned down the reward money from the SEC whistleblowing program. That was millions." "Jessie, I didn't turn it down," Jessie corrected. "I put it in a trust, for Mike, and for my tuition. So, you're going back." "Law school starts in the fall," Jessie said. She looked out the window at the towering skyscrapers. They didn't look so intimidating anymore. They were just buildings, made of glass and steel, and glass breaks. "I realized something that night," Jessie continued. "The law is a tool. Sterling used it as a shield. I want to use it as a sword." Victoria smiled, raising her coffee cup. To the waitress who took down the king, Jessie clinked her cup against Victoria's. To the invisible women. She finished her tea, stood up, and walked out of the shop. She walked past the Obsidian, which was now boarded up, a Felice sign in the window. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. She had a class to get to. And this time, when she walked down the street, people got out of her way. Not because she was serving them, but because she was walking with her head up. And that is how Jessie Jenkins, a waitress who was supposed to be invisible, brought down an empire with nothing but a notebook and nerves of steel. It's a reminder that no matter how powerful someone appears, the truth is always more powerful if you have the courage to speak it. Sterling thought he could buy his way out of anything, but he couldn't buy silence from a sister protecting her brother. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, do me a huge favor, hit that like button right now so we can share this underdog victory with more people. And if you want more incredible stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss the next one. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful what you say when you think no one is listening.